Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Dr. Phil is going to get started, and I will just be here in the background letting everybody in to the Zoom. And if you have any questions, I'll be monitoring the chat. I'm handing it over to our wonderful Dr. Shu.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you for everyone joining us today. So I guess you can see me, right? So I open my camera. So I hope you have received an email from me. I asked Leila to send you some tutorial document that helps you to set up your Jupyter notebook through Anaconda. So may I ask if anyone had any issue with the setup? If you were able to run the Jupyter notebook script in your Anaconda, please raise your hand so that I can see how many of you have set up your Python program. Okay, very good. Very good. Seems, yeah. Some of you just joining us. So I'm asking if you have received a document from Leila that helps you to set up your Jupyter notebook and Anaconda. So if you have set it up, please raise your hand. Okay, most of you. Okay, so today we have this short session, have a few purposes. So first one is I want to give you a quick preview of what we are going to use in our program. So I'm going to teach you 3 classes that will use Python in doing some project exercises and teach you, of course, from the very basic how to do the Python programming for us to do financial analysis. And another objective is I will spend a little bit of time just briefly talk about why we choose Python, right? And of course, many of you know it's used very often now in the financial industry, but particularly I want to show some examples how we can use programmings that help us to do better investment analysis or some applications in the financial industry. And also, you know, our MSF program is affiliated with the CFA Institute, the CFA University Affiliation Program. So
may I have some Cholula, please? Thank you.
Yes. Do you have a question? Okay, George. Do you have a question?
Oh, no, sir. Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was unmuted.
Problem.
My apologies.
No problem. No problem. Okay, so if you have raised up your hand, you can put it down. Okay. So how many people showed up? Okay, so 11. Okay, so may I ask you a quick question? How many of you have used the Python? Did any programming project in Python before, or any coursework or any training sessions in the past? Okay, I have 1, 2. Okay. Okay, a few. Okay, good. Do you mind if if you want to speak, you know, in the Zoom, that'd be great. Or you can type in the chat. So what kind of project you did using Python before? Can you briefly tell us or tell me? So yeah.
I forgot the name of the class, but it was like a data analysis class or something that I took last year, and we learned how to code basic stuff. I was terrible because the language is very confusing, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, no problem. So you did some descriptive statistics, calculating some mean, variance, run some regression, this type of analysis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, very good. Anyone else want to share some of your experience?
Yeah, I started actually at USD for my bachelor's degree. I started as engineering, so I took
Oh,
a computer science course on that.
oh, excellent. And do you still remember something that you did in that course?
Here and there, but I'm pretty sure if I get some refreshers, I'll be solid. I should be
Okay,
fine.
excellent. No problem, no problem. Don't feel shy or anything that, oh, I don't know anything about programming. So for our MSF program, we really do not assume that you had any programming experience or knowledge. So of course, maybe in the high schools or in your undergrad course, you have taken some programming courses, but here we start from ground zero. Okay, so we will start from very basic things. And after, hopefully, you finish a few courses with me, with some other professors in MSO program, we really hope you can use it in your future job. So really, you will see how powerful is the Python programs that help us to do a lot of wonderful things that probably usually takes us hours and hours to do it in Excel, right? So for finance people, we always like to use Excel, but now once you learn Python, I will say you will never want to go back to Excel. A lot of things can be easily done in Python. So I want to quickly start with this short presentation and I want to hopefully tell you a little bit about the current trend of, programming, data science, but also, artificial intelligence, right? Nowadays, this is a very popular buzzword. Are you able to see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, sir.
Any of you? Just let me know. Yes? Okay. Great, good. Okay. So, right, so artificial intelligence, of course, a few years ago, just before 2023, people know about artificial intelligence probably because the computer can outperform some professional chess players or Go players in the world. So those are very complicated, right, games that human beings have been playing for thousands of years. But then suddenly the computer can beat the professional world champions. So ever since then, you can see how much is the increase in the interest of artificial intelligence. So since 2014, 15, you can see the Google search for artificial intelligence has gone up more than 3 times. Now, early this year, that's really a revolution time for artificial intelligence. Everybody nowadays are talking about ChatGPT, right? So as you can see on the left of this graph, so it only took ChatGPT 5 days to accumulate more than 1 million users, which takes Netflix more than 3 years to have more than 1 million users. So I assume some of you already start using ChatGPT, right? So there are, of course, things that still needs to be improved, but we are really impressed with the performance of using artificial intelligence tools to generate some responses from the questions you ask the program. So I would say that's the trend. More and more, we are going to use those artificial intelligence tools in helping us to make all sorts of decisions, including in finance, investment, portfolio management, all sorts of decisions. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, all these buzzwords people confused about, what exactly they mean. Are they talking about the same thing? Are they interchangeable? So really, those are different algorithms, computer algorithms that help us to let the machine to mimic, right, human intelligence. So machine learning actually started quite early in 1980s that both use the traditional algorithms, right, to look for trend patterns in the data, let the algorithm to learn from those data set and use that to predict the futures, help us to make forward-looking decisions. Now, deep learning is a revolutionary algorithm that they use, they develop based on the neural networks. So nowadays, when we talk about artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, those large language models, most of those models are built based on deep learning and neural network. So the advantage of using neural networks or deep learning is it comes really closely with the large data set. So if you have more data set, more information, then it will really leverage the power of using deep learning algorithms. So those are the things that we really see, the big data and artificial intelligence tools go along with each other very well. We have seen many applications of artificial intelligence in many different fields. So in finance, we have already seen banks, investment companies, lenders. So they use functions. So customer service, fraud detections, so credit lendings, right? So looking at huge amount of data, not only the credit score, but many other spending behaviors. If you have the data about people's purchase, financings, how they deal with the bills, all these things, information is helpful for the lenders to decide credit lendings. And of course, investment, more and more we see companies start using global advisors, which is less costly, but at the same time, it take advantage of huge amount of data, automate a lot of process. So everyone's talking about how fast the artificial intelligence is growing in the financial industry. In your generation, I'm sure this will be an essential skill that you have to prepare for the future jobs in this industry. So the amount of investment coming into this artificial intelligence in financial industry is huge. So I think the current number 2020, it was about 50 billion. Now they're projecting double the number in 2024 to 100 billion. So in the last 10 years, it's already invested more than $350 billion investment in this fintech artificial intelligence field in finance. So, but at the same time, I want you to see not very recent, but that's the survey that did by the CFA exam, done by the CFA Institute. So there is clearly a gap between how much the industry are demanding for the skills that they hope the analysts and portfolio managers they should have, and actually how those analysts portfolio managers they actually master those skills. So this is a question they ask portfolio managers in the last 12 months. So have you used any of these AI tools, AI technology in their investment decision? The answer is only 10% of the portfolio managers they responded, said that they have used AI tools in their investment process. So if you look at the financial analyst, so 75% of the analysts, they said that they have not used any of the AI machine learning tools in their investment decision. So clearly there is a gap between how much the industries want and then how much actually the users, the analysts and the portfolio managers, they're equipped with this skills that are needed to do those type of more advanced work. So now, if you look at when those analysts and the portfolio managers, they responded, how they use AI or big data in doing investment management. So the response really is related to these three things. So many of them, they use the natural language processing to process or trying to dig more information from unstructured data. So many of us know, right, we can analyze financial reports, look at the numbers. The numbers are easy to deal with as long as you use Excel or any of these traditional tools. However, to analyze those the data, such like CEOs, they speak, right? They speak in the conference calls. So those speech data, their tones, their body language, right? Their emotions, or even in the annual report, usually people ignore those images, right? The table formats. So a lot of these things traditionally are not analyzed by the tools because of the limitations in those traditional tools. But now, since we have many of these advanced AI, big data tools, it helps us to dig deeper, and that gives us a lot of insights. Many research has come out and find that many of these signals embedded in those unstructured data can tell us much more than what we can learn from traditional data. So this is one you can see applications of using AI and the big data that help us to improve our investment decision makings. And then using data, finance is really having a lot of data. So some of the data could, we know the high frequency data, right? And a lot of text from the filings from companies. So big data that needs special tools to analyze them. So that's why we rely on AI technology to help us to dig into those large data set. How many of you read annual report from the front page to the end? Some of the annual report, just reading one annual report, it probably takes you many hours, right? So some of the annual report could be more than 100 pages. So for human beings trying to detect the insights, some signals from such a large amount of data, it's difficult. So that's why we need to rely on machines that can help us to detect those insights. So, and also with machine learnings, with AI technology, deep learnings, so we can leverage the power from different models, different algorithms, and then let them to compete, pick the best. They don't have to directly compete. They supplement the power with each other. So you can add models on top of the other models so that you can really take advantage of the computing powers and the learning tools in different algorithms to enhance the signals that you can extract from large amount of data. So if you look at what the analysts and the portfolio managers, they think what they want to do with it, many of them, they are highly motivated. They say they are currently in the process of learning artificial intelligence, machine learning tools. So this is more, about 20% of them, they have done some training in the past 12 months. And then many of them, they plan to do it, the data analytics trainings also for the future, the jobs they're doing. So some of you are joining our school. Hopefully you have done a tour on our campus. So I hope you have taken a look at our brand new trading lab. So that's really a state-of-the-art financial trading lab. We have, I think, the largest number of Bloomberg terminals on the West Coast compared to other schools. So anyone have used the Bloomberg terminal before? Bloomberg? If you have used the Bloomberg, okay, good. Are you certified? Have you done some certification with Bloomberg?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay. So do you know Bloomberg also started incorporating these artificial intelligence tools in their databases? So here is one example. So they developed the sentiment analysis based on the social medias. So they analyze real time, more than millions of documents, tweets, Facebook posts, all these information. Anytime there is a mention about the company, they will start extracting the data and then putting together to start calculating the sentiments. So look at, the variables of sentiment analysis is simply look at the positive, negative tones of, the discussions around the company, and then send that signal to the users so that you are aware of the conversations that's going on in the market, how the discussions about the equities and whether that signal can be used to predict the future. So here's an example. This is pharmaceutical company. So Bloomberg gives real-time signals based on the tweets discussions. So green bar shows positive discussions, and the red means negative, and the yellow means neutral. So when it shows some abnormal kind of volumes of discussions, particularly positive, very negative discussions, then it sends these purple bars. So that basically it's a reminder that something going on in the social media space that probably will ask users to pay attention to it. So here, this case study shows that, here, the very first purple bar, once it send out this signal, you can see the climb up of the stock price, so it went up almost from 20 to 40. And after another several reminders, social media space, another big jump in the stock price. So it was, showing some of the application unstructured, which usually very but these artificial intelligence and the sentiment analysis trying to aggregate all those information together to help us for investment decision makings. So their research is trying to see whether different artificial intelligence models, which one performs the better. Of course, the easiest model we are familiar with is the ordinary least square regression models, OLS, right? So this compares the Sharpe ratio of using different models to see what is the investment performance. So as you can see, OS is not the highest, of course. Those ones that we're using neural network, which we call deep learning models, outperforming much better than the simpler models. So this is a paper published in a top-tier finance journal recently. It's a forthcoming paper, but they have done a large sample studies trying to compare different models and see their performance in the investment world. Okay. Any question, by the way? So we don't have many people, so feel free to ask any questions, or if you don't want to speak out, feel free to post your questions in the chat box. Okay. So this is a suggestion, not from me. This is a suggestion from the CFA Institute. They say, what should we do as a finance professional, right? So you come to USD, enrolled in the MSF program. So definitely a computer science major, right? So we are in finance, master of finance major. So how can we really be successful in this faster growing trend, right? In this industry that more and more companies adopting, advanced technologies, want the people to know more about technology, how to handle data, large data, programming, these skills. So this is the suggestion from CFA Institute. So they call this T skills. So the T skill is you still have to have a domain knowledge. This is important. People see you still as an expert in finance. Okay, so that's why you come to a Master of Finance program to still learn all kinds of finance related courses. So that's your expertise you still want to build and deepen that expertise. Then at the same time, you need to have some broad knowledge of these different technologies that's available to you. And you should build a skill to be able to communicate between those technology experts and finance experts. So that's why many of the courses you are going to take in our program will see, first of all, is the foundational knowledge you learned from different finance courses. And our finance courses is developed based on the CFA curriculum. So at the same time, in many courses, you're going to see the applications of these finance knowledge in using technology. So for example, in two of the courses I'm going to teach, one is called Advanced Seminar in Corporate Finance, and the other one is Advanced Seminar in Assets Pricing. You will see that perfectly the combination of fundamental knowledge and the applications in technology. So in those courses, I will survey the literature, survey the knowledge domains related to corporate finance, like dividend policies, capital structure, investment, mergers, acquisitions. And then you are going to do a hands-on project using real data, using large data set, and look for the insights from the data to make a insightful conclusions. So writing a report, making a presentation, of course, is the deliverables, but that is the type of trainings that you should expect to receive in our program. It's not only just trying to help you to pass the CFA exam, which is also very important to us, but at the same time, we want you to be able to apply what you have learned in the real world. And I want you to learn the skill sets that can bridge finance and the technology together. So all the project you are going to do with me is going to be based on Python programming, and deal with very large data set. So we're talking about you are going to use all publicly traded companies in the United States or maybe in other countries for the last 10, 20 years. So all the information so that you can see the big picture, not missing anything when you do the research. Okay. So now for why do we choose Python? So of course, many of you know that, but I just want to show some survey results in the professional world. So Python still ranked #1 programming language by 2020 up to this point, 2023. And then if you're talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, Python is one of the 6 most popular programming languages. So the projects you are going to do in some of the courses, in the 2 courses I'm going to teach. So you're going to see how we can apply Python programming in doing some interesting AI, machine learning, or large data analytics project. So just give you a quick look at the courses that may use the tools that we're going to talk about today. So I teach MFIN 500, Intro to Python for Finance. So this is really an introductory course that we start from the very beginning. So I do not assume you have any programming experience or knowledge. So we start from the very beginning. So today you're going to see it. So we start from simple calculations, 1 + 1 = 2, those kind of things that how you do that in Python. And then once you learn the basics from that course, you can apply that to the quantitative methods, which is taught by Dr. Marco Svitina. So you can see how he applies that in data analysis, such like regressions, descriptive statistics, clusterings, all these basic statistical analysis. And then you can also apply this to equity valuation models, program it so that you can make it easy to do the valuations for many companies at the same time. Then in my 2 other courses, I will teach, then you will see the applications in corporate finance and assets pricing. So assets pricing, such like CAPM models, that's the most basic assets pricing model. Then we will see how we apply the 3 factors model, 5 factors model, momentum factor model. So how do we program those things and then do the back testings? So those are really helpful for us to detect the trend and the patterns for predicting future returns. Okay, so that's why our program is STEM certified. So we have some international students, right, want to apply for 3 years OPT visa after the program. So many of the courses are using quantitative tools to understand the finance problems. So that's why it's not only finance, but also very quantitative oriented. Okay, so that's a quick introduction. Okay, so of course, I know I will see you in September, but in between, if you have any question, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so this is my email. So today I want to quickly give you a preview of the Python environment and do some very basic codings today, so that I hope you don't feel scared. Oh, I'm going to learn such a complicated language. No, it is very, very simple language. It's just like we learn a new, foreign language, start from the beginning, and gradually we'll be able to do more interesting things with the language. Okay. So I hope you have installed Anaconda on your computer. If you have received the tutorial document from Layla, I hope you have tried to install that on your computer. So if you have Anaconda installed, let's start Anaconda on your computer. So let me share my screen while I start my Anaconda. Okay. Okay, so once you start Anaconda, and then you have a Jupyter notebook, right? So start the Jupyter notebook. And according to the tutorial document I sent to you, you should have tried to run this Jupyter notebook file called a Python pre-course tutorial. Okay, so if you open that, this is the tutorial document. So let me have a pause, and then let me see how many of you were able to run this tutorial notebook file. If you are able to execute those commands, so as I explained in the tutorial, you do Shift-Enter to execute those commands. So in the last step, if you do Shift-Enter, you should be able to see a graph. Yes, Andres, question. So you raised your hand, so you were able to do it, right? Okay, very good. Anyone else? So basically, this is to show you that if your installation of Python was correct, then you should be able to load those libraries into your Jupyter notebook. So if you do Shift-Enter, and there is no error message, and it says libraries imported successfully, then you can move to the next command box and then do the Shift-Enter. Now this is, just a random generator. So we are randomly generate some numbers. And then this command box is to draw those random numbers. So that's why we call it a random walk. right? Just like in the stock market. So every time you generate a new set of random number and a product, it will look different. And I'm sure your graph would look differently from mine. So that's okay, because we are generating random numbers. Okay, so let me have a pause. Any question when you execute this Cuban notebook file? Any question?
I have a question, not
Yes.
pertaining exactly to this, but I am purchasing a laptop, so I'm not sure which one would you recommend personally, if I should go to like HP or Lenovo, or because
I don't have preference. So many students I see in my class, they use Mac, but I use Dell, so it doesn't really have any difference. Yeah, I use the Dell, the regular, PC computer. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
gotcha. Okay, appreciate it.
yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so that's why when I send out the tutorial document, I have two, one for Mac, one for the PC. So yeah.
Yeah, I need to get rid of my Mac because my job requires
That's
other
completely fine. Yeah,
other.
I to be honest, I don't like Mac, but yeah, most of the students choose Mac. That's fine. Yeah. So yeah, if there is a difference, I will give you the code in the class. So this is for the Mac user, this is for the PC user. So I will be clear, but most of the codings are exactly same. So don't worry about that at all. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes, and just a quick note, because for my course, I do the projects and the exercise using programming quite a lot. So my class most likely will be scheduled in the trading room, our new finance trading room. So you can always still use your own laptop to do the programming, but I also recommend students to simply use the lab computer to do the programmings, because in the lab environment, our technicians standardize all the Python installations. So sometimes I do see some students, get some errors, that is because the error is unique to your own installation environment, and sometimes it's harder to figure out what's wrong with your installation. So that's why I recommend students, sometimes when you get an error in running the program, so maybe you should try it on the school's computer, because that is a very standardized, and if there is an issue, we can always get more help from our technicians on campus. Okay, so but don't worry, so we will be able to deal with those things later. Okay, so if you are able to run this pre-course tutorial file, then I'm happy that your Python setup is okay on your computer. Okay, but if you run into any issue, please let me know, or it will be much easier to deal with this in person. But if you take a screenshot, send me emails, I will try my best to help you to solve the issue. Okay, now let's close this, so you can simply close this on your screen. So now I believe Layla also send you a link that that takes you to a Google shared folder. So do you have that link? So if you click on that link, it should take you to a shared folder on my Google Drive. So let me show you how does that look like. Okay, so share screen, and then this one. Okay, so are you able to see the documents in this folder? It's called the Python Preview Workshop shared folder. So there are several things here. So you can download each of them and put it on your computer. But before that, make sure you know where are these files downloaded and saved on your computer. So if you want to, maybe you can create a folder, on your desktop, or maybe create a folder in your download folder, and then save each of these documents in that particular folder. Okay, so don't just randomly put it somewhere on your computer. Later, we need to make sure that we are able to find those documents so Python can read those documents and open it. Okay, so if you already have this pre-course tutorial file somewhere on your computer, maybe the easiest way is just to put all the rest of these files in that same folder. Okay, so the one that we just run on the Jupyter Notebook, if you have that file and you know where it was saved, then you save all the other files in the same place. So that will be the easiest way to call those files later in the same Jupyter Notebook program. Okay, so I'll give you a few minutes. So you need to right click and you say download. Okay, so when you download, make sure you know where it is, the file is saved. Okay, if it's the default, probably is saved in your download folder, but if you want to put it in some other folder, you may have to copy and paste to a dedicated folder. So later you know where you can find it. Okay, so the most important one is this one. So make sure you download this one called a Python_preview_workshop handout. Okay, so we are going to do some basic codings on this document. So please download this one first. The others, probably, if we don't have the time, we can do it. I can share the code with you. You can play with it later. But the most important one is this. Okay, so Python preview workshop handout. So please download this and then put it in a dedicated folder. So you need to know where that folder is on your computer. Okay, so I assume you're able to download and know where it is. Then you need to load this file into Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And I know it will, in my case, it is saved here on my desktop on the folder called a Jupyter, called a Python preview workshop. So if you click on this file, then it will be open in Jupyter Notebook, just like the pre-course tutorial file. Okay, so if you click on that, then this one will be opened on your screen. Are you able to see my screen showing July Python preview workshop, July 12th, 2023, this document? Yes, very good. Thank you. Okay. So today, of course, I just give you some simple kind of coding exercise. Just want to make you feel comfortable that the Python is not a monster. So it's very simple. So you can simply use Python just like a calculator. Okay. So here, for example, if you want to calculate a number for 5 divided by 8, how much is this, right? So you can simply use programming to find out the answer. So we can do 5 divide by 8. And then once you enter this, do Shift Enter, you see the answer, right? And this is the beauty of using Jupyter Notebook. It's very interactive. So I'm not sure how many of you have learned C, C++. So in older days, you have to write the entire code, then run it. But here, it's very interactive. Once you write one line of coding, immediately you can see the results, right? So here, the Jupyter Notebook, here, this cell is the command cell. Once you execute it, this is the output cell. So the output shows you the answer. Now, another example, so 5 to the power of 10. So the power function will be 5 double asterisks and then 10. So this is 5 to the power of 10. Shift Enter, immediately you have the answer. Yeah. Now, this is a function sometimes used quite often in programming. We call it a remainder function. So 43 divided by 5, how much is remained, right? So we know 5 times 8 is 40. How many left is 3. So is that the case? Let's see it. So 43 And then the remainder function is using a percentage sign and 5. Shift enter. You can see the remainder is 3. Yeah, so as you can see, this is already we are doing programming in Python, and you can use Python just like a regular calculator, right? Now you can also do more complicated math functions, right? So start using combinations of parentheses, multiplications, divisions, adding up, or subtractions. So those things, you just need to follow the same mathematics orders. So Python will do the calculations in parentheses first, then they will do the power function, then they will do the multiplication divisions, then they will do the subtractions and additions. So exactly same as what we have learned in our elementary schools. So for this, you can see here, you will do 2 plus 1 first, 3, and then 5 raised to the power of 3 times 2, then subtracted from 10. So if you don't want to type this, you can simply copy, Ctrl+C, and then try to execute this in the command box. Shift enter. Okay, so the answer is negative 240, and you can manually double check the answer. It should be correct. Okay. Now, this is an application of doing a calculation related to finance problem. So if you have $100 and you invest this money at 10% return each year for 7 years, so how much money would you have? So this is a typical future value calculation, right? So I give you just 2 minutes. So see if you are able to get an answer from Python. Okay, so you can simply program this. This is a future value calculation, right? Present value is 100. Interest rate is 10%. So of course, be careful using percentage sign. Python doesn't know the percentage. Percentage means something special, right? It's a remainder function. So don't enter 10%. You have to enter as a decimal number, 0.1, right? And then raise the power of 7. So see how much do you get for the future value. Okay, anyone can give me the answer? Cat. Okay. 194.8. Okay, thank you. Let's see. 100 times 1 plus 0.1, that's the 10%, right? And raised to the power, so the exponential function, 7. Am I right? Shift enter. Yes, right? So here, it gives you more decimals than you need, but same answer, right? So if you want to make a nicer format, you can call the round function to round this number. So round this number by 2 decimal points. So round this, comma, 2, parentheses close. Then we are calling a function that already built in Python. So it helps us to round up to the number to the second decimal points, right? So now this looks much better. Okay, any question? Please let me know. Okay, so in any programming language, not just a Python, it's important that we can save some of the data or some of the answers in a temporary memory on the computer. So that we call the variable. Okay, so in Python, we can create those variables with all sorts of names that you can remember. And later on, if you want to use those saved numbers again, you can simply call the variable name instead of manually type those numbers or data again. So here, this is one example. We create a variable, we give a name called X, okay? And for this variable, we assign a number to that variable. The number is 5. So to assign something to a variable in Python, we use the single equal sign, okay? Later on, we are going to see a double equal sign. It means something else. But at this point, we just assign 5 to this variable called x. So if you do shift enter, it seems nothing happened, right? However, in the backend, Python already remember that 5, this number, is now stored in this place in memory, and you can call that place x. So here I run out of the command cell, so I can go up cell and insert cell above. So now I have another space to enter a new command. So if I want to recall that number, I can simply type the variable name x, shift enter. You can see Python return that value stored in that variable, right? So this is very helpful. And of course, it's just, you can store anything you want in a variable. So it can be just a single value like what we have just seen here, but it can be a huge data set, okay? So hundreds, thousands of data points, we can assign it to a single variable. So later we can recall that by just typing the variable names. Okay, so in this case, we are going to assign 5 to a variable called x, assign 4 to variable y, and then I want to do a calculation for x plus y. So let's go back to this command box, and I'm going to put all these together. So capital Y, I'm going to assign a value of 4, and then I want to calculate x plus y. Now, be careful, x is a lowercase, y is an uppercase. So I want to use this as an example that Python do pay attention to whether it's an uppercase or lowercase letter, okay? So here the y uppercase, it will be different from a lowercase y. So if I do this, of course, the answer we know should be 9, right? So 5 plus 4 equals to 9. But these number now assigned to those variables. So in the future, we can replace those numbers in those variables. So that's why we use variables instead of individual values, because the variable doesn't need to change. Well, you can replace different values in those variables. Now, you can also assign text message to a variable. Okay, so let's say if we create a variable called a, and we assign a word called hello to this variable. Now, in Python, if you define define something as a text, you have to put quotation marks. It can be double quotation or single quotation. It's the same thing. But once you put something within the quotation, then you tell Python, treat this input as a text, not as a number or value or other things. Okay, so if we do hello and call this variable, it will print this text message on your screen. So that means now hello, this word, this word now is assigned to this variable, and we are calling this variable here to print the message on the screen. Yeah, so now this example, we also put b variable, create a b variable, and we put this word world exclamation mark. Okay, so now I have a and b, these two variables. Now let's do an interesting experiment. So before we had x and y, and we do x plus y. What would happen if we add a plus b here? These are two text right? The data. So a plus b, what would happen? So Python is very smart. Python will not mess up thinking the text will not be added up. Actually, they do a concatenation. So it will concatenate these two text messages together. Okay, hello world. So you don't need to even teach Python right? So how to deal with those text message. So the text data is treated in a different way. Okay, so how about you try this exercise? I want you to create a variable called height and assign a value 1.79 to this variable. You create another variable called a weight and assign another value 68.7 to this. Okay, and then I want to create a new variable called a BMI, right? The body mass index. And this variable should be equal to the weight variable divided by the square of the height variable, and print show the BMI values on your screen. So please try that. Based on what we have discussed so far, this should be quite easy to implement. Okay, so if anyone got the answer, can you just copy paste your answer in the chat box? Let me see how much is the BMI index you got from this calculation. Okay, good. 21.44. Okay, thank you, Andrews. So let's do the coding here. So I create a new variable called height and assign 1.79 to it. I create another variable called weight and assign 68.7. Yeah. And then the third variable is called a BMI, and BMI index is the weight divided by, now to be clear, I wanted to do the square function first on the weight, on the height. So height square is the power function, right? So raised to the power of 2. So of course, some of you, if you listen to what I said early, so you actually don't need the parentheses, the bracket here, because Python knows it will do the power function first before it calculates the divisions. But just to be, make it clear for us to read in the future, I put a parenthesis. Okay, so if you want to see the results, you can do BMI, or you can print, specifically tell that Python to show this results on the screen. So you can do print BMI, shift enter. So this is the same answer that Andrews got, right? 21.44 BMI index. Okay. Any questions? Now, there are some rules that you have to pay attention. Not you cannot actually use these names to create variables, okay? Because these by default are the functions or important command that has been already used by Python language. So you cannot use these things for a variable. So let's say I want to create a variable name class. So this is not acceptable by Python. Okay, so I'm using this example. Class equals to MSF, shift enter. You can see Python gives you an error message, syntax error, invalid syntax. It is because class has been already used by Python language for something else. So this is another important command that Python does not allow you to use to create a variable anymore. Okay, so that's okay. So we can just do something else. I call it a class 1, then it is acceptable, but you cannot call it a class. Okay, now as you are aware, so we already see 2 different data types, right? So the basic one are the numbers, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So those we call it the integer data in Python. If your number comes with a fraction, decimals, so those data are slightly different from integers. Those we call it float number, but both integer and float are numerical data. So that means you can do all sorts of mathematical calculations based on these data. So you can add them up, divide them, so do all sorts of things. So because those are numerical values. Now, the one we have seen early, hello world, those kind of words, text message, in the Python language, this is called a string data. Okay, so for string data, there are a whole sorts of different functions that you can use. And when we talked about the sentiment analysis early, so if you want to process hundreds of documents, really you have to master the functions on the strings. So do all sorts of manipulations of text data. Okay, so Python is very, very powerful of processing those text data, and there are specific library you can use to analyze the data, those text data. Okay, there are other data types that we are going to see later, when in a real course. But today I'm going to show you that you can actually check what kind of data type you created in those variables. So remember, we create a new variable called a BMI, right? And if you type BMI, you basically call the values that was saved in that variable, so 21.44. So if you want to check what is the data type of this variable, just in front of this variable name, you call the function type, parenthesis, the variable name, and then it will return you the data type of that variable. So as you can see, since we assign a numerical value, which is also a decimal number to that variable, so the type of that variable is a float. Okay, so this you don't need to define it by yourself. Python automatically detect what type of data stored in that variable. So it looks like a decimal number, then automatically it assigns the float data type to that variable. So, but here we're just looking at what Python tells us the data type of that variable. Okay, so do you remember we create a variable called a C early, right? That we concatenate, let me see, did we do that? So actually, let's just call it A. We didn't create a C variable. So remember, we assigned a text message, right? Hello to that variable early. So now if you want to see what about data type, you do type this A variable, and now Python return a different data type. This is a string. So that means this is a text data. It's different from the numerical data. Okay. Now, this one I want to briefly talk about. This is a third data type, which used very often also in Python programming. It's called a bool or boolean. So boolean is a logical value. Basically, it's true or false. And it corresponding to true or false to a numerical value. True has a value of 1, and a false represent a value of 0. So when you type this kind of equation, so you ask a Python, is 5 greater than 6? True or false? Shift enter, Python tells you false. So this answer is not a numerical value, it's not a text message. This is not a string. This is a boolean. It's a logical value. Okay, so is 5 less than 6? Then the answer became true. Okay, and you can also assign this to a variable. So let's say this variable is called a D. Okay, so I'm assigning this 5 less than 6 to this variable called a D, and then I check the type of this D variable. You will see Python give me a different data type. BOOL stands for Boolean. So that means this is a logical. So it's a true or false value. Okay, so we will deal with a lot of these Boolean values later, because a lot of times when you say artificial intelligence, how you make the machines intelligent, a lot of times you let the machines to make decisions, and decision is made based on whether something has met a condition, leads to a true or false, and then the machine choose the path to continue the next steps. So, and then a lot of complete models is basically started from these true or false, yes or no, these kind of outcomes. Okay, so I want you to try, there are a few examples here, and we already tried the first two. If you do 2 plus 3, you get 5, A, B plus C, D, you should get a aggregated, the concatenated text, A, B, C, D. Now try this. If you add two Boolean values, true plus true, what do you get? So you can do print, true plus true. Shift enter. As I said, so true is assigned with a value 1. So if you add two truths together, 1 plus 1 equals to 2. Okay, so if you do true plus false, of course, the value will be just 1. So 1 plus 0 equals to 1. So as you can see, Python is very smart. It can quickly pick up what kind of data type you provided and then do the math accordingly. So you don't need to tell Python what's the data type. So it can tell it from the data you provided. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so of course, later on, we will deal with much more complicated data structures. So it's not just a single value, it's not just a sentence of words. So we're dealing with many more data points. So there will be more complicated data structures that we're going to deal with. And we will use specialized libraries or packages to deal with those complicated data, such like pandas. So pandas is developed to deal with the Excel spreadsheet types of data. So with columns, rows, and then huge amount of data. Okay, the next I'm going to quickly show you the interaction between humans and computers, right? So, so far, it's like you provide a command, ask the computer to do it, but computer can also ask you for information, ask the user for information. And then by taking the information from the user, then the computer can do something with it. It all depends on, your programmings, right? Your programs, what you want to do with the user provided information. So here is a function that would let the computer to reach out to the users and then ask the user to provide certain information. So it's called an input function, okay? So in this command, now you can start reading these, you can start reading those Python code. So if you do input function, and here in the parentheses, you give a message so that you can tell the user what kind of input you want. Okay, so that's why it's a text message. So I use quotation marks, single quotation, double quotation, doesn't matter. Okay, so here I'm using single quotation. And I want the user to enter the name, okay, the username. So enter your name and give a colon here. So if you do this shift enter, you'll see there is a text box pop up on your screen. And then here, this is exactly the message you entered in the input function parentheses. Enter your name. And now, if you are the user, if you execute that command, then you can enter some information to pass on to Python. So let's say I give my name here, and then simply press enter key on your screen. So you can see right now, Python simply print out the message you just entered, right? But it doesn't have to be just simply printed. You can actually save this user input information in a variable, and then later you can use it for subsequent analysis or subsequent calculations. If you ask them to provide a number, then you can put into your calculation algorithms. So that's why here you can assign this user provided information to a variable. Let's call this variable name, and then assign the user input name to this variable. Okay, and then I will do something. Let's say print name. Shift enter. Okay, so you can do anything, write anything, any message. then it will print it. Yeah. So of course you can do some creative things. Say, is a good man, right? Shift enter. So you say Phil Zhu, enter. So you see now the programs is adding some additional message on the user's provided information. So now it prints out the Phil Zhu is a good man, right? So you can do all sorts of things, but just be careful. This is something we'll talk about later in the course. Whatever the user provide in this input function, Python treat this as a string value. So if you actually provide a numerical value, you have to convert that value into a number, into a string, or into a integer, or convert it into a float, so that you can use it in some mathematical calculations. Otherwise, if it's a string value, then you cannot use it to do other calculations. Okay, so give you a quick example. So let's say enter your age. Okay, so now let's see the type of this. Yeah, it's not called a name anymore. Let's give a different name. Let's call it age. So I want to check what's the type of this variable. Okay, so first of all, now you see enter your age. So okay, so 40. Okay, and then the type, it's a string. It's not a numerical value. Now, if you do want to treat this as a numerical value, you have to change the type. So right now the type is string. Okay, now if I do int, so that means I'm forcing this variable to become an integer. And then with this integer number, I can do more math calculations. Otherwise, you will get an error message. You cannot add a simple 5 to a text. Okay, it has to be either adding text to text or adding numericals to numerical. So let's see, shift enter, 40. So you see, now you get a number 45, because my programs ask my programs adds 5 to the user input number 40. So 40 plus 5, 45. Okay, any question? Okay, so you can also change it to float. It doesn't matter. So in this case, integer is more appropriate, but you can change it to float, and then it can still do the same thing, but it will give you 45.0, because float, naturally it's a decimal number. Okay, so now in running the programs, if condition is very useful. So a lot of times, right, we ask computers to make decisions, but you have to make the rules to tell computers how to make decisions. So here's one simple example. We calculate BMI index early. We already know the formula. If you tell me the height, if you tell me the weight, right? So we provide those values to the formula, I can calculate BMI index. However, if you want to also ask the computer to give more information to the user based on the BMI categories, so BMI under 18.5, I want the computer to tell people that you are in the underweight category. If the BMI index between 18.5 to 24.9, you are healthy. If you're over 30, then you are obesity. So those are the extra steps, right, that I want the computers to be able to make the judgment, to do to create this message automatically, instead of every time I have to refer to a BMI table and then tell the user. So in this case, it's perfect to use the if function in Python. So if something met this condition, then you give this message. And if not, then provide a different message. So this is a perfect example of using if. Okay, so again, I want to create this program to be very interactive. So I want the users to provide the user's height and weight, and then automatically my program will tell them which category they belong to. So they belong to underweight, overweight, obesity, all sorts of things based on the BMI index. So based on what we just learned so far, now this is a very simple example program we can develop on our own now. So we create a variable that's called height. Okay, now this time I want the user to give me that information instead of I provide the data. So I ask the user to input their height. So, and you want to provide a very clear message, right? So height can be measured in different ways. So my formula is based on the height using meters. So you want to specify that. So please enter your height in meters. Okay, so that's the first variable, which will capture the user's input about their height. And then I create the second variable called weight, and then ask the users to provide their weight information. So weight. And I want to be clear, the weight should be provided to me in kilograms. Okay, so if you give me in pounds, then that means it requires a different formula, right? Okay, so then once I got this data from the user, my program will start doing the calculation. So BMI equals to, so weight divided by height and raised to the power of 2. However, anyone can remind me something I have to do with those variables before I input into my calculation? Anyone can remind me? So if you run this, you will get an error. So let's try it. Yes, you have to convert the data type. So we can try the shift enter, you see? So this is okay. So I do 1.7 is meter. Let's say 80 is kilograms. So you can see I got an error message. An error message, actually Python is very friendly, user-friendly. It actually tells you what's wrong. So here, if you read the last sentence, unsupported operator types for this with string and integer. So that means something wrong with your data type. So you actually import a string variable in this formula calculation, and string variable cannot do a power function on it. Okay, so what we need to do is we have to convert this user provided data into a numerical value. And here the best numerical value is a float. So I'm calling a float function on the weight, and then float function to convert the height information to a numerical value. Okay, so now if you type print BMI, shift enter, you see I enter the same information here. Now I got the answer. Yeah, so that's why I said the input function, when you use it, you have to be careful. So the default is they always treat it as a string value. In order to do numerical calculation, you have to convert it into a number. So BMI. Okay, so now I have a few more things I want the computers to do, right? So now I know the BMI index, I can program it to give me the message, which category is my BMI index belong to, right? So it is a bunch of if sentence. So we can, and this is very similar to English language, right? So if something is meeting this condition, then do something with it. If not, do something else, right? So this is very similar to our language. So if BMI is greater or equal to 30, right? So I start with the highest number. So because that's easy. So once it's met, then something will be done. If not, it will automatically go to the next category, which is a lower number. Okay, so it's always easy to start with the higher end values. So if BMI is greater or equal to 30, now using the if sentence, it's very important to end that if sentence with a colon. This is very, very important. If you are missing this colon, then this is a syntax error. Okay, this is just the way Python speaks its own language. Okay, it has to end with a colon. Now, once you have that, if you press Enter key on your screen, on your keyboard, then it automatically will go to the next line, but with an indentation. Again, this is a fixed format required by Python. If you're using if condition, if sentence, then the next line, what you want the program to do, it has to be indented. Okay, so if it's not indented, when you execute it, Python will give you an error. So it doesn't read it properly. Okay, so if BMI index is greater or equal to 30, I want Python to print a message on the screen saying your BMI is in the obesity range. Okay, so this is what I want Python to do if the BMI index meets the first condition. Now, if not, then what do we do? So we add a new line, but this time it will be going back to the very beginning, because this is not for the first condition now. The first condition is completed. If it's met this condition, it will print this message. If not, we will do an elif. That in the English speaking, we will call this else if. Okay, so the first condition doesn't met, then what about the second condition? The second condition is BMI is greater or equals to 25, colon, indent your next line, okay? And you don't need to manually input the indentations. When you do the enter, okay, on your keyboard, Python would automatically indent the next line for you. And then we will do print, okay? If you don't want to type, you can just copy this sentence and change a few words. Okay, so your BMI is in the overweight range. Okay, and then there's a third one. If neither of those top two conditions met, then Python will go to the third one, BMI index greater or equal to 18.5. Okay, then print. Your BMI index is in the healthy range. Okay, and then the last one, we can simply just say else, everything else. So if none of these conditions met, then do the very last one. It must be smaller than 30, smaller than 18.5. Then we just do print. Your BMI index is in the underweight range. Okay, so this is our program, a very simple program trying to capture people's height, weight, calculate BMI, and tell you what category you belong to. Shift enter. So now we start executing this very short program. Okay, very simple program. So 1.7, 80. Okay, it prints out my BMI and then also gives me a message. So your BMI is in the overweight range. Okay, so this is because 27.68 met the second condition. Okay, so that's why it print out the second this message. Okay, any question? Okay, so
for some reason my shift enter isn't working. Is there something I possibly
it's because some of the colons are missing. That's a possibility. Check the colon. Now, since actually there are easy ways to actually do this particular program, because we only have one sentence after each if or elif. So if you want to write this in the same line, this is also acceptable. But the tradition for doing if is we have to indent it in a different line. But since we only have one line coding, so if you do this in this particular example, it should also accept it. So let's say 1.7, 80. Yes. So if you want to write in this case, in this example, this is okay. So write it in the same line. Okay, you don't need to worry about indentation, because indentation for the beginners, it's easy to make mistakes in the indentations. Okay, if you add a space or you're less than a space, sometimes Python will give you trouble. So for this example, you can simply write in the same line. Okay, does that help?
For some reason, just none of my codes are running. I think it might just be my computer. But...
Oh, okay. So if that's the case, maybe what you should do is go to Jupyter Notebook, go to the top, kernel, and then you can do a restart kernel, because sometimes there's some memory issues on your computer or something that may cause, you know, the crash in the computation, the server. So do the restart and then come back to this coding box and then do Shift Enter. So sometimes that's the issue. If not, maybe there is some issue. I need to look at your code, then I can help you.
The kernel, it helped. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, so it seems we're running out of time, but that's definitely not the purpose today to teach you Python today. Okay, we're going to spend a lot of time in a class. Okay, I have 3 classes with you to show you from the very basic, like we do early, adding 1 + 1 = 2, this kind of command, till we can run more sophisticated things. But if you want, actually, I did provide you some examples to do some interesting things already. So if you scroll down to almost the bottom, so there's an example called a sentiment analysis using bag of words approach. So this example is using a paragraph, a long paragraph of text. This is a speech made by our chairman of the US Federal Reserve Bank. So Powell made a speech on January 10th, 2023. And this was the original link where I took the text of his speech and then saved in this text file called a speech.txt, which you can download from the Google shared folder that, you know, we have download this handout where you download this handout, so you can find this speech.txt. So I have already written the code for you here. So I just want you to get a feeling of, you know, programming the sentiment analysis is, you know, extremely simple. So if you simply execute this line, and of course, when you do this, make sure the speech text data is already saved in the same folder where you saved this handout file, okay? If you got an error message says Python couldn't find this file, it's most likely because you saved this text file in some other place. So by default, this should be saved in the same folder of this handout file. Then when you execute this, you can see this is a long paragraph of that speech, okay? Analyzing this, reading this, just for such a short speech, it takes some time for us to, right? And trying to understand and then analyze the positive, negative tones. So my program here is trying to capture how many positive words in this dictionary. So there is another file you downloaded called a positive.txt. So if you execute this, you can see this is a long list of positive words in the English language, okay? And then we just trying to clean up to make it lowercase here. And then I have another list of negative words in the English language, also a long list. This is really a whole dictionary of positive, negative words. And then here, I just trying to eliminate some punctuations, make the text clean for analysis. So this is the command to do that, okay? And I convert all the text to lower cases so that I can match with the positive, negative words dictionary. And I split the text into individual words. and I start using this command to count how many of these words appeared in my positive words dictionary. So there are 17 positive words in Powell's speech on January 2023. And if you execute this, there are 4 negative words. So for a simple calculation for the tone, so the tone is a measure range from -1 to +1. So closing to +1, that means extremely positive. When you get a number that's close to -1, that means extremely negative. So for this particular example, the tone is 0.59. So that means it's quite positive in this speech. Now, I encourage you to read it by yourself and see if the computer is correct or not. And I have another example in the folder. It's called a speech 1. This is a very recent speech he made in a conference in Europe, I think in beginning of July. So if you load that text file, okay. Oh, it's called, what is it called? I forgot. Let me see. Speech 2, sorry. Yeah, speech 2, not speech 1. That's why it gave me an error because no such file. So speech 2, and then run the rest of the computations, and you will see the tones are very, very different. So I want you to read it by yourself and see if the sentiment analysis makes sense to you or not. Okay, so I want to stop here. Thank you so much for attending this preview session of Python, and we will do more interesting things later in the program. Don't worry about it today. I went it quite fast, but just want to give you a peek of the Python environment, how we start the programmings, and how easy it is to do the programmings using Python. Okay. So you're welcome to send me any message, send me emails later if you have any question. But we will do some interesting things in the fall. So I really look forward to working with you. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. You're welcome.
Hi, Phil.
Thank you, Layla. You're still recording, so maybe you can.
How was that good? Did you like it?
Oh, yes.